Hey, this is Pamela Riemenschneider from Blue Book Services. I have Greg Johnson here, our Director of Media Development, and we are talking the Produce Reporter Week in Review. It has been a newsy week, Greg. We have a lot of things, and especially the thing that we've been talking about all summer. The suspension is over, but it's actually back. What's going on with the tomato suspension agreement?
Yeah, there was a deadline and they pushed it right up to the end of it negotiating. And finally, the Mexican growers and Department of Commerce and U.S. tomato producers did come to an agreement this week. And it's subject to a 30-day comment period. And then it'll become official if they don't change their mind over this comment period. And so it should be good for American buyers of tomatoes. One of the sticking points is there's a pretty heavy inspection provision in there. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of waiting to talk to both sides once this clears up a little bit so we can talk a little bit more about what the reality of that will be. The Fresh Produce Association of the Americas has warned that as high as over 90% of tomato trucks would be inspected, and that's compared to right now, we're less than 10%. So,
yeah.
Could the border handle, 5 to 10 times more inspections? It doesn't seem very realistic. So we'll have to see how that plays out, if that's realistic and how that would work.
I know they have a few months before that they're going to have to start doing these inspections. But even just thinking about the logistical nightmare, because honestly, it's not like there's a whole bunch of border inspectors just sitting around with nothing to do and a whole bunch of empty lots for these trucks to queue up in. It sounds like a logistical nightmare. So I think that's something over the next couple of months we're really going to be looking at, the feasibility and logistics of rapidly ramping up these inspections.
Yeah, I mean, even add the fact that earlier this year, due to illegal immigration problems at the border, they were pulling inspectors to do, border processing of people coming across the border and claiming asylum. I mean, it just doesn't, there's such a mess there right now. Like I don't know how this is going to work exactly.
Yeah, it's definitely something to watch, definitely something to be concerned about. And we'll be following up over the next couple of weeks. Don't worry, we're not done talking about tomatoes.
No, we certainly aren't. And I can't let this opportunity go without giving a heads up to the props department. Cute little tomato.
Awesome.
Well, do you have a prop from one of the biggest stories you had this week? Where?
No, I don't. I should have brought one here. I'm sure my kids have one somewhere.
Of course, I'm talking about a frog in a salad.
Yes. And I've been waiting to write a story about frogs in salads for a while. Ever since I was at the Center for Produce Safety's Research Summit here in Austin back in June. They had a fascinating, the researchers give updates on CPS-funded research, and one of them was about frog intrusion. And the researchers were trying to figure out ways to keep frogs out of leafy greens, especially because the Pacific tree frog is, for some reason, mesmerized and just attracted to leafy greens. And so first of all, the researchers were trying to figure out why the frogs go in the fields. Is it a mating season thing? Is it a water thing? And then the second part of the study was to figure out what kind of fencing would actually keep them out. Because it turns out, if you've ever been to around leafy greens, a lot of them have these maybe like waist-high fences around them. Turns out those fences do nothing to deter the frogs at all. Zero efficacy of keeping the frogs out, which is a big problem. Because this whole thing, it's been blowing my mind. Anyway, so we heard about—
what does the fence look like that works?
Okay, so yeah, the fence that works is actually, there's two of them. One of them is a regular fence that has a sandpaper-like texture. So their little feet won't stick onto it very well. It's hard for them to climb up it. I guess it hurts. And so they're like, yeah, never mind. And the other one is a fence that has a little lip. And so like right here, the frog starts climbing and then they just hang out right here instead of going over. And they just stop.
Yeah, and it's short, isn't it? Like just a foot tall or something?
Yeah, it's really short. It's just, they were figuring out that it was the lip that was what the frogs were liking. So those were two possible solutions. But there's still, the research is ongoing, and it was really fascinating. It was one of those sessions where, you know, some of that stuff can be a little bit dry, but they had that one, and then they had this one about using falcons to keep birds out of like things like tree fruit and leafy greens. And, you know, they figured out that falcons plus drones and a couple of other things were actually so effective at keeping, it sounds like really far-fetched, you know, what are you going to do, hire a falconer to just sit out of your field all day? But it turns out that they're actually saving so much bird loss that it was worth the cost. So that was another fascinating one.
Hey, back to this frog. What are the chances that a frog ends up still alive in someone's salad? To me, that was the shocking part. The shocking part was not seeing a frog in a salad. Like, that could happen. Mm-hmm. The fact that it was alive.
Okay, so here's the other part of it. After I went to the research symposium, I went to the Organic Produce Summit, and we did a tour of the Taylor Farms retail facility. And this is where they pack millions and millions of clamshells and bags of salad. And so they come in, they go through the hydro cooler in the truck, and then the field mechanically harvested greens get dumped onto a conveyor, and they go up a conveyor, they go through optical sorters, then they go through the wash process, and then it goes through a giant spin cycle, right? Like a big giant salad spinner, basically. To see the frog that would go through that, normally like 99.99999% of these are going to get kicked out in the optical sorter process. And actually someone there told me that they keep them as pets when they find them, when they get kicked out by the optical sorter, which I think is super cute. I would totally keep a frog as a pet.
Yeah.
But so to find a live one, first of all, way better than finding a dead one. So
I'm not eating the salad either way.
I know, right? I'm not going to eat it. But after seeing that process and seeing actually how fast the greens go from in the field packed container, through the wash process, through the spin cycle, up the conveyor, and down into a clamshell, I could see how a frog could totally live. They would have to be a really great swimmer. They'd probably be pretty dizzy. The chill factor from being in the cold air would probably kind of maybe put them to sleep or something like that. And then going through the distribution system, it would be one tough frog, but I could see how it could happen. Having seen that firsthand, I could see how it happens. You know, fresh produce is something that grows outside. Bugs happen, and apparently frogs happen.
Well, you could avoid all that by going to the farmer's market.
Sure.
All right, speaking of other unusual stories with a maybe a little bit happier angle, the avocado, the huge avocado trend is starting to heat up again. You know, what's so fun for you about that story?
I don't know who else remembers when Avocados from Mexico had their April Fool's story about the 52-pound avocado. But when I saw this story go viral this last week of some people that are growing Russell variety avocados in Florida, and Russells are known, they're like my prop here. They're long and they're elongated gourd-like avocados.
Which,
instead
if
of
I recall from your video, the longer the avocado, the smaller the seed.
Yes, that's exactly it. They actually have the pit to flesh ratio that everybody wants to have. So you get this long avocado, and it's got all of this. It's like shaped like a butternut squash almost, and they can be up to 3 feet long, I guess. But so these people that had a fruit stand in Miami and a small farm started growing this variety, and somehow they went viral, and they were even on the Today Show talking about these big avocados. So it reminded me of the gentleman in Hawaii who had an avocado tree, and he was donating like 6-pound avocados to the food bank regularly. And then somebody finally noticed and said, "Hey, this guy's just bringing us this enormous fruit." Yeah. And then a friend of mine just moved to Hawaii, and she sent me a picture of, it was like 2 pounds, 13 ounces, an avocado from her backyard. And then I started looking around on the internet for giant avocados, huge avocados. And I came across this one called the Avozilla. And it was a promotion by a retailer actually in Western Australia. And so what this market was doing is last year they decided to go ahead and offer this enormous spec avocado, like this big. And the biggest they could get, and they branded it as an Avozilla in their store. And they were selling it for the equivalent of about $8 a piece, which, I mean, in this summer's market, doesn't sound that outrageous, right? And they were so successful, especially with social media, on that promotion that they decided to bring the giant Avozilla avocado back again this season as a special item when it was in season. So I thought that was interesting, and it kind of mirrors what we've seen with retailers and promotion organizations and grower shippers of taking those teeny tiny avocados, the small ones that normally wouldn't have been packed, and kind of rebranding them into a feature, not a flaw, and capturing the consumer's minds. And of course, I mean, you're going to have to toast a whole loaf to use one of these giant avocados.
Yes.
So they're more of a quirky, fun item to talk about than to actually buy and use. But I really thought it was fun to see them so much coming from everywhere and going viral on my newsfeed.
Yeah, I thought it looked really fun. I'd love to see someone bring that to a party and make some guac out. No, just one avocado. It'll feed all 30 of us.
Right? Yeah, that's what I thought was so funny about it, is because, you know, we talk about avocados all the time because they're such a trendy item, because they're such a growing item, that there's the other side of it, not the small ones. There's the other side where it's the giant avocado, and just to think about all the guacamole that you can get out of these giant avocados. I would love to see the Avozilla cut to see what that pit looks like in there, because I'm afraid there's going to be one of those giganto pits, and then you're stuck with like 2 inches of flesh around it, and then you get paid $8 for it. And it's like, oh, yeah. Man, seriously?
Softball-sized pit.
Yeah, right. that was fun. That was a fun way to talk about produce and talk about a different way to market produce and capture people's imagination. So that was a fun way to round out the week. Well, that's it from the Produce Reporter newsletter. If you are not getting the Produce Reporter, you need to go to producebluebook.com and sign up. See you later, Greg.
See you next time.
I'll bring a frog next time.
You see what brand it is?
Yeah, I know. You cheater.